Good morning, good afternoon, or even good evening to all you amazing ARU students all the way up there in Essex, because I'm down here in Cornwall, down in little old Newquay. Okay, so previously I've sent you three previous videos which were all about sustainability. This video is a bit different, but it will link to those sustainability videos that I kind of sent you. So what is today's video about? Well, I'd like to discuss something called NDD, Nature Deficit Disorder. Nature Deficit Disorder. The phrase was coined by a gentleman called Richard Louv in a book that he wrote called The Last Child in the Woods back in 2005. Nature Deficit Disorder. And it was just a theory. Let's just break that down. Nature Deficit Disorder. A disorder that he believed he was seeing within youngsters and older children as well. All right? Nature Deficit Disorder. Break it down. Nature. We know what nature is. You know, nature outside, the environment outside, different environments, whether it's the beach, the woodlands, you know, grasslands, fields, or animals, or plants. So nature, we got that. Deficit. Deficit normally means not enough of, a deficiency of. So you've got nature, deficit, not enough of nature, and then disorder, which causes a disorder. Disorder, you know what that means? Something that's no longer in order, confusion, or the breaking of natural orders. So now you kind of understand what he was trying to say. He was trying to say he believes he is seeing in young children, young minds, a absolute lack, a deficiency in the link and the beautiful relationship with nature, and he believed it was causing disorders or confusion or behaviours, sometimes unwanted behaviours, within young minds or children. I don't want to go into it too deep, all right, but I am going to kind of splice this video around a little bit, and we're going to go on different journeys, and we're going to really take this apart, this thing called nature deficit disorder. So, coined back in 2005, Richard Louv, a book called The Last Child in the Woods. I recommend it. It's a great read. It's a great read. So imagine you are this maybe scientist who is studying these small minds, and you're seeing this thing called nature deficit disorder within children or within young minds. What would it look like? So picture this. Imagine you were not able to interact, or even be amongst this kind of environment. Imagine if this kind of environment caused fear to you because of the textures, the senses, the noises, and all because you have no relationship with it. The developing mind was never taught how to interact with this natural environment. It is destroying the natural order. And it's not just this environment. Imagine if you couldn't interact or be in amongst this natural environment either. You know, all because, once again, it could be the colours, the smells, the sensations again, the noises from the creatures or the rustling of the leaves, the light flickering through. If you have not experienced this, and you are, once again, like I said, a developing mind, which is developing, learning, growing, and you don't experience how to interact with these different environments, it is going to be so foreign and scary to you as that child or even that young adult. So let's take this apart even more. What does that mean then? What does that mean for these people who are experiencing this thing we call nature deficit disorder? How is it affecting maybe their behaviour? How is it affecting how they interact with others in society? Or how is it affecting them in regards to how they interact within their education, in their school, in their classroom? And what are we going to do about it If this is out there and this is happening, how do we combat it? What do we do about it? And how can we show other people the effects? So let's move on. Back again, once again. So as you can see, we've come back inside now. And I just want to make it absolutely clear, I am not against being inside. We do have to be inside sometimes. I'm not against being in a classroom. That's not the issue. I'm not against technology, computers, laptops, mobile phones, the mighty internet, if it's used correctly. My issue, and the issue with nature deficit disorder, or its issue, is that there is not a balance. The balance is way out of kilter. Remember, nature deficit disorder, a deficit, a lack of having a relationship with nature. Now, this next bit of the video, you'll be glad to know you won't see my face much longer. I know it's a big ugly face, because what I'd like to do is almost like a PowerPoint now. You're going to see some images flash up. I will read them out as well and add to it. But the reason I'm doing this is because with this nature deficit disorder, I want to give you some quotes and some references so you can go and study it yourself and look at the pros and cons, positives and negatives, and, you know, make up your own mind in regards to this subject. Is that okay? So, without further ado, let's crack on with the next part of this video, and here comes the PowerPoint. And you don't have to look at this anymore. Bonus.
Right, let's start by asking the question. First of all, why is it an issue? Why are we talking about this now? Why are we worrying about it? And why is there a large community of people worrying about this too? Nature deficit disorder. When there is a lack of relationship between a person and nature or the environment around them, they are less likely to care about, respect and understand nature or the environment. So therefore, if we do not begin to develop meaningful, strong, powerful relationships of nurture and respect with nature itself, we will just continue to destroy and manipulate it at an unsustainable rate. And that's what we are doing. That's what we are doing. So therefore, if you think about this, if you've got children unable to build relationships and have strong bonds with nature and the environment, how are they going to be custodians of the environment in the future when they're adults? Why would you want to look after something if you don't love it? Do you understand? Does that make sense? So look, we could in effect cause the collapse of our species. This is a bigger picture. We're looking sustainable now, way into the future. Remember the analogy I used of the acorn and the tree? That's what we've got to start thinking about. So look, I've put a few links on here. There's a brilliant video called Dear Future Generations. Oh, sorry. It's a bit of a tearjerker. I'm not ashamed to say it, a bit of a tear in my eye. But take a look at it. See what you think. I've put some other little references in there, little quotes. So that's the first question that we need to answer, isn't it? Why is nature deficit disorder an issue? And why are we even discussing it today? So, what are our worries, our fears, the red flags, or in other words, what are the consequences of nature deficit disorder? So, there are many consequences to face when our relationship with nature is non-existent. We're obviously going to be impacted physically, cognitively, emotionally, and socially. It's important also to understand that all of these impacts are completely interrelated. Obviously, one doesn't just happen without the others kind of falling like a set of dominoes. Let me give you an example. If a child is overweight due to lack of outdoor physical activity, just think about that, okay? They also could be treated differently by their peers. Now, that's now going to affect their socially. This is then going to help kind of lower their self-esteem, so lack of self-confidence, that's to their emotional kind of intelligence being kind of degraded. On top of that, this could also affect their performance in the classroom, their learning, so cognitive. So what I've done, I kind of tried my best to sort out what things are affected by nature deficit disorder, And what I'd like you to keep in mind is that many of the ideas presented in this presentation, actually you will see them overlap. And it's almost like, it's the best word I could use, an avalanche of consequences. It's this tumbling snowball getting bigger and bigger, grabbing all the different things like the social, the emotional, cognitive, it's all balling together. So I hope that makes sense. Right, anyway, I'm digressing. Let's crack on. So let's start by breaking down those areas. I've just called them the avalanche of consequences. The emotional, social, physical, cognitive. Now, one of the most easiest ones to spot is, of course, physical changes. So let's just centre on that one for a moment. So physical consequences are the most easily identifiable when discussing nature deficit disorder, and you can understand why. It's because we can actually see them. So let's start by understanding exactly how a lack of relationship with our natural world affects the human body, and how those impacts or effects can impact our recreation and leisure. Because this is the one where we can physically see it. You know, sometimes it's hard to see emotional effects and social effects, and we know this. We know people can hide those feelings, but not all the time, because people act out in behaviours. But physical, you can physically see it. So let's bang on and start with that one first. No, it's an absolute fact that more and more humans are leading sedentary lifestyles. And we know, and I don't have to explain to you, we know that sedentary lifestyles have played a huge role, an absolutely phenomenal role in the rise in obesity, which makes sense. If you are not moving around, but you're still eating, you're not getting rid of that food, that energy, those calories. You are going to, help obesity rise through our nations, rise through our children, and even in adults. Take what's just happened. We have all just gone through a horrendous thing called COVID, and we're still going through it. But people had to work from home. They became more sedentary. And what's happening now, some people like that lifestyle. It was easier, so they're more likely to stay at home and work from home. This is worrying. There's a worrying trend here. All right? So this is why I wanted to focus on the physical first of all, because we can see its impact straight away. But just by going out for walks, going out on a daily basis, moving around helps everyone, not just children, but especially children, gross motor skills, fine motor skills, just movement in general. All right? So other factors are, of course, screen time. Now, when I say screen time, I'm talking about obviously your mobile phones, your laptops, your iPads, your computers. It is phenomenal the amount of time young children are spending on these devices. Now, I'm just going to read this to you because I've actually pulled this whole this quote off of something, and you'll understand why I've definitely pulled it off, because something very odd I will read to you in a moment. You'll go, why on earth is he going for a walk around that place when he's in Cornwall? Anyway, listen. Experienced by children and adults, the dramatic increase in screen time plays a huge role in nature deficit disorder. Right? Today, children between the ages of 8 and 18 years spend an average of 6.5 hours a day with electronic media. I'll tell you right now, I believe that's actually children younger than that are spending even more time on that. But even that is shocking. 8 to 18 years of age, and they spend between 6.5 hours a day on electronic media. My children, if they could, they would be on their phones all the time. And I have to say, absolutely no. Off they come, internet's off. It's phenomenal. But I'll come back to that in a moment, because there is a reason why they're doing that. So, the hours spent on devices has taken away precious leisure and recreation time, which is what we discussed. So it's taken away the time they should be out, maybe getting their natural exercise, and this is why, unfortunately, it's leading to obesity. We also may think we're experiencing nature when we watch an episode of Planet Earth. I know! I've heard people say that. Or create imaginary gardens in a special app on our phones, or walk around Yellowstone National Park Instagramming everything we see. You can tell I pulled this off because obviously Yellowstone National Park is definitely not in Cornwall. Anyway, I digress. But the reality is, we're not. Parents have developed a fear of the outdoors because we're looking at 2 or 3 generations now who have not got relationships with nature, so they're not passing it down to their parents. Does that make sense? Look, it's getting worse. Take this. If a child is on a computer game, computer games are designed to become highly addictive. And if you have a young child with a very young, susceptible, developing mind, and he is looking at a game that is designed to be highly addictive, then that child will get addicted to it. It's getting its rushes and its endorphin rushes from playing that game. And it's in charge of that game. If it's doing that all the time, the brain craves that. Therefore, why on earth would you want to put that down and go outside where you would have naturally, by running around playing having adventures with friends and other people and socialising, produce those beautiful natural endorphins? But no, it's been taken over by these games or by social media with the other children constantly getting the likes, dislikes, which is even worse because it helps kind of hinder their social and emotional intelligence. It is phenomenal. So hopefully you are not all asleep right now. I apologise, this droning voice of mine. Hope you're not all snoozing or falling off your chairs. Let's jump straight into, let's leave the physical, let's go straight to cognitive, all right? Nature deficit disorder also has cognitive consequences. And what are they? What are the cognitive consequences? Well, many of which of these are never more present than in children than in adults, all right? So nearly all of what I discuss here will be related to children and development. Children and development, which kind of ties into adults being a bit minimal, which hopefully you can understand. Children can also be referred to as the formative years of life. Obviously, it's where we have all our adventures, we explore, it's all the great stuff. We become boring sometimes when we become adults. And it's for a reason. It's a time filled with, like I just said, exploration, discovery, innovation, and basic understanding of life and things around them, the environment, nature. Now, many of these experiences, or at least the best of them, are absolutely rooted in a natural world and natural environments. So let's examine the various cognitive consequences presented when nature does not play a prime role in a child's life and how they impact its recreation and leisure within those environments. So let's just jump straight in and have a little scan at these now. For example, self-risk assessment. Oh my word, we're taking away by not allowing children to be in their natural environment. So I don't want to get into too much of a philosophical debate here. Whether you believe in evolution or creation, the human being was either designed or evolved to be in a natural environment. When you no longer have the relationship with that environment, which has been either evolved into you or designed into you, wherever you believe, how on earth are you going to be able to self-assess danger or risk? So look, another way in which nature deficit disorder affects cognitive development is by taking away meaningful experiences that install a sense of judgment to properly sense danger. It's that self-risk assessment. You've taken it away from that child. So when they do go outside, oh my word, of course they are going to be having a real sense of danger because everything looks dangerous. They can't interact with it. There's fear of these natural spaces or creatures around them or animals approaching them or even other human beings. Never ever is it more prevalent right now than what I said earlier. During COVID, we had to stay in. We're seeing more and more of this. People not being able to interact anymore. And I'm not just talking about children. I've seen it in young adults, all right? So having a healthy relationship with nature is a way to combat that. Self-risk assessment. Even things like loss of discovery. And when I say loss of discovery, what I'm trying to say is you've all heard of those amazing tales when, let's say, ancestors have passed down stories of what they did, fishermen's tales, sea shanties, songs. If we don't pass down things that we discovered as adults about nature to our children, there will be no link. I'll tell you, I'll give you an example now. If we have more and more teachers coming through our system who they themselves do not have a link with nature, well, then they're not going to pass it down within their teaching. They're highly unlikely to push it into their lessons, their sessions, or their curriculum. I mean, here's the thing. I'm going to ask you all a question now, as a group, sat there right now. How many of you, some of you might go, yeah, I could do that easy, and I am proud as punch of you if you could do that, and if you become a teacher, please pass it down. But I'd like you all to do this. I'd like you all to kind of, after this session, not right now, please don't leave just yet, but when you go outside, I want you to try and find 10 different plants and name them all. 10 different flowers and name them all. 10 different trees and name them all. If you could find 10 trees, that'd be amazing, different ones. And then try and find 10 different creatures and name them all. If we can't do that, there's an issue there. We ourselves are the ones that have this loss of discovery. And then, you know, the opportunities for discovery, well, they've diminished. They've gone all the way down for these children, because it means we're not going to take them out. We're not going to take them out. We're not going to help them discover, because we don't want to go out, because we don't have the relationship. We don't have the knowledge, because it wasn't passed down to us. And then, of course, this will lead to loss of critical skills, which goes back to what I was saying in regards to us losing those skills of self-risk assess. Now, once again, I'm going to read this word for word to you, because this is actually a quote I've stolen. So I've put all the references and quotes in there as well. So just please listen to this. One of the areas in which researchers are currently focused on in terms of cognitive consequences of nature deficit disorder is that which affects test scores. Now, in our current educational climate, focus is placed on how high a child scores on standardised tests. Researchers have found that a lack of human to nature relationship, ding ding ding, leads to lower levels of problem solving, critical thinking and decision making skills. These are the most important skills a child can have when it comes to understanding and synthesizing information on standardized tests. There is positive correlation between students' test scores and nature experiences. I will expand more on these studies in the case study section, which will come up later. Can you believe what I've just said? I'll read that again. These are the most important skills that a child can have when it comes to understanding, synthesizing information on these standardized tests. If the schools want these children to do better in these tests, give them more time in nature. Give them more time learning outside. Have teachers that are passionate about teaching these children about nature, getting them outside and the environment. If I can see that, surely other people are able to see this. Whew! Sorry, leads me nicely into emotional, because I got rather emotional then, because it's just so frustrating that if I can see it, why are more other people not seeing it? So looked at physical consequences, we've looked at cognitive, let's look at emotional now. So emotional, affecting people of all ages, nature deficit disorder encounters many emotional consequences. Some of these are second-hand consequences derived from those already discussed in other areas, which we've just done. We've just done that, and you can see how they're linking. Remember I told you about that snowball effect or avalanche effect? They all are together like a little bunch of dominoes. They all hit each other. And some of them are direct effects from not experiencing nature deficit disorder. Exploring the emotional consequences of nature deficit disorder will help us further understand how our recreation and leisure is impacted. All right? So how, when we go outside for a recreation or we go outside for leisure, this is what we have to really focus on. And schools have to as well, even in regards to how they design their playgrounds, because that frustrates me. You chop down loads of trees in forest and you build a fake mini forest, swings, climbing apparatus, slides, or whatever, when it was already there. So make sure if you're going to design a park or a playground or something you're going to use in leisure and recreation, make sure we design it so it's as close to nature as possible, or just leave nature there. Stop cutting things down. Sorry, getting emotional again. I do apologise. I'm not ashamed to say I'm going to read this quote for quote again, because some of it was so powerful that I pulled out from the books and different areas and different research and different quotes that I thought it hit the mark straight away. So I don't want to elaborate on this too much. I'm just going to read straight from the kind of some of the quotations. Lack of self-confidence. This can only lead to a host of issues, one being a lack of self-confidence. At the core of our emotional health is the ability to love who we truly are, beings who belong in nature. Our ancestors lived and breathed in the outdoors, and it's only been a short time in a span of man's lifetime that we have created the indoors. How cool is that? That covers everything we were talking about earlier. Sorry, I'll carry on. Our bodies are intrinsically related to nature. And to deprive ourselves of nature experiences is to deprive ourselves of who we are. In turn, our confidence is lessened and our emotional health is affected. Listen to that. That's really powerful stuff. It almost makes me now want to stop this and go, well, I'm going to go for a massive walk right now and go pick up some sand, rub it in my hands, and then go and hug a tree. I love it. Plus, if any of you watching this right now have younger children or younger siblings, you know this bit is absolutely true. It's absolutely, especially during lockdown. If you are stuck in a small house or a flat or a caravan or wherever you live with your whole family, with your own children, with your own siblings, younger ones, it's massively confusing to them. Increased anxiety and stress. So it's also been shown in children who don't get enough outdoor time that stress and anxiety levels rise. I've seen this with my own children during COVID, because my children are completely outdoor children, but stuck inside, they just couldn't cope. I mean, think about it. Right now, you lot are stuck inside, listen to this droning voice of this bloke go on and on and on and on, and probably all you want to do is just go out for a walk. So I better get on with it. I apologise. But if you take in all those factors, it's going to affect them in every single point. Like I said, all of these things we talked about, cognitive, emotional, social, physical, it's all linked. It's all linked. And look what it says right at the bottom. Their schoolwork will suffer, and so do they. And of course, they're suffering because now they're so confused, they are not going to be able to control their emotions, and you're probably going to get unwanted behaviour. So just think about all of this now, right? Everything we just spoken about. So coupled with poor self-esteem and increased anxiety and stress, adults and children both struggle to control their emotions. I would say more so with children, because they've still got developing minds and they still have this confusion of what emotions are. However, it's a natural path for an unstable mind to a decreased ability to control emotions. That makes complete sense. If you have a jumbled, confused state of mind, a disordered state of mind, of course you're not going to be able to control your emotions. Put on top of that, not understanding what your emotions are, because you are a very young child. And of course, this in turn, especially for young children, I keep saying it with developing minds, is going to lead to issues in regards to socialising. You know, how do you interact with other people? I mean, we've just spoken about confusion with emotions, right? And having anxiety. There's nothing worse when you've got anxiety and you don't want to interact with someone else because it causes more anxiety. So this is that snowball again. This is that avalanche again. Also, think about this. If you don't want to socialise with people, you're probably not going to socialise with kind of the environment or nature in general. Now that's really harsh. That's now you becoming an inward, almost selfish person where it's all about you. And it's not your fault. It's just because you haven't learned how to be social, how to share, how to be part of something bigger. Can you see how this is all kind of fixing together from the very start? That snowball rolling down the hill, picking up all these different areas from cognitive, emotional, physical, to how you now fit in society. You feel like an outcast and you cannot, listen, interact with nature or the environment around you. Which now obviously leads to you being unable to form or keep or make new relationships, or old relationships will break down. You know, family relationships, friend relationships, or you just don't know how to make friends. Relationships become broken, or like I just said, you don't know how to make them. And here's the really sad thing. You then start to have, and don't forget, I'm speaking as a child here, so imagine the child not having a sense of community, doesn't know where it belongs. The only place it feels safe now is back indoors, maybe with that little screen in front of this child's face, maybe on that game, maybe in control of that game, but he's safe. That's its community. That is outrageous. Now, I sent you 3 sustainability videos. Think about that. If we're looking at that little individual being an individual in society in the future, it's not sustainable. He doesn't know where, she doesn't know where they belong. And here's the really scary thing. They can get to an age where they just want to belong, and they can get pulled into very dark relationships. You know, pulled into groups. They don't really want to be pulled into that group, but they just want to belong. Imagine, I want you all just to think about this. Do you have a sense of community? Do you know where you belong? It's a very powerful thing. And something that kind of scares me even more than anything else is if you think about these little children who are going through this and growing up, and they are going to be the adults of our next generation. Well, if you've got a shrinking sense of community, social justice and equality begins to shrink in the public eye too. And if you don't foster relationships with immediate communities, then those children are going to struggle to relate to those who are different from them or from others. You know, it gets to a point where we struggle to stand up for them for equality. This is just another major social consequence of nature deficit disorder. Just consider that. I'm going to read that again. Listen. We will struggle to relate to those who are different from us or others. And as I said previously before, you know, if you're a child who doesn't know where you belong, but then you start kind of getting a bit older and you're trying to find where you belong, there's that issue. And I said about maybe getting into dark relationships, so not very good relationships, or getting pulled into groups that are not the best groups out there. Well, I just want to read this to you. All right, it's another quote, so I apologise, but I just want to read this to you. Another consequence that's tied to no sense of community through nature deficit disorder is that of safety. When we do not know our neighbours, we don't feel safe. A sense of fear is instilled in us, and we don't know where we fit in. We're scared to send our kids out to play without supervision because we don't know who or what may be lurking around the corner. Concern for ourselves and for our children's safety is one of the most important social consequences to understand. It's what keeps kids indoors and away from nature. It's a cycle that is difficult to break. The only way to begin developing a healthy relationship with nature and sharing those experiences with your children is to actually do what I've just said. Get out there and share those experiences with your children within your community, whether it's your own children, your siblings, or even you're the teacher in the school. So, if you are still awake, all you amazing ARU students, and you've managed to kind of get through all that, I hope it's been helpful. The next couple of slides, there's a lot of information there about case studies that you can look into. So it's not just me waffling on I do apologise. I have to say that I am coming from a pro nature deficit disorder. I actually believe there is this kind of disorder around, and it needs more and more kind of experts and more research done. But I do believe it is out there, because that everything we've been talking about kind of makes sense to me. And unfortunately, through my career, which has been it's spanned over 25 years now of working with either young teenagers, young adults, or children from foundation level all the way through to year 6, 7, 8, even into secondary. I've had a fantastic career, and I hope it continues, but I've seen these elements getting worse and worse over the last, I would say, 10 years, you know, and over the last 5 years, especially with COVID, I've seen it more and more and more. But the scary thing for me is, like I said, I'm seeing it younger. I'm seeing it younger and younger. It's going to give you a little a demonstration of kind of a little story that will hopefully bring all this together. I remember visiting a school, and I was looking around their school because they asked me to look at their school grounds, and I was doing so. I was looking around their school grounds, and there were some children playing in what they built like a woodland area, and they had lots of little bits of round wood, and some of the children were writing on it. I saw one little boy sat there with this little round piece of wood, and he was actually touching it and swiping it like he was on his computer game. Probably one of the saddest things I've ever seen. But it's made me realise all those other things. You know, he had anxiety, probably didn't want to be outside, he just wanted to be inside in his little world that he is in control of, that unfortunately these crazy computer game designers have made addicted, so he's addicted to it. But even though there was all these other children playing around him and doing their thing in a very well kind of designed little woodland area in a school, he tried to find the thing that makes him feel where he belongs and safe, and that was his little device. And he didn't know how to interact with other children. You know, he didn't know how to interact with the playground or the little area. So just thought I'd leave you with that one. It kind of sums up everything. So here's the thing now. What can we do to address the issue? Now, what we've got to do first of all is try to answer this question. What can we do to address the issue of nature deficit disorder? Now that's just massive. Considering all the stuff we've just spoken about, that is a really hard question to answer, isn't it, really? If you think about everything we've just spoken about. However, you know, after putting all this kind of stuff together for you, I've learned even more. And by the way, can I just say I've really enjoyed putting this together to you. But what I can say is that the majority of those people that I've spoke to who are actually trying to address this issue would agree with me hands down that the best thing is to kind of help children build relationships with outdoors, is for you, the adults, to help them. If you're the teachers, the parents, the older brother, the older sister, help them. If you build your relationship strong with outdoors and nature, you can then pass it down to them, you know? So if we are to begin to implement and manage solutions to this issue, then I believe we must first realise that some difference exists between the child and the adult, and of course our population in general, because we've got to go back to what I said. It's all very well saying, oh, let's just get kids outside, but what if the adults take them outside haven't got a relationship either? You know, they've got to have a relationship too, to be able to kind of help that child. Now, I'm going to add another little video on the back of this little slide here. When I was on the beach earlier, I saw two parents with a child. I'm not going to tell you too much, just watch the video. It's brilliant, it sums up everything. Okay, all you ARU students, this is amazing. We were just doing this talk on NDD, which is Nature Deficit Disorder, and I've just seen this lovely lady, and she's down here with her son, and may I ask, husband?
Yes.
Yes, just making sure. And they were, and daughter, but they're in amongst, oh look, and the daughter's there. I didn't see, sorry, I didn't see. But the lovely thing is, it's exactly what we were talking about. We have a group here, 2.4 children. These parents can see the importance of the natural environment and letting their children interact. And they're out walking on the beach. I just saw them in the rock pools. Her mum saying, don't go too deep, you know, go to the knees, your boots will fill up. Have you ever heard of nature deficit disorder?
Not until now.
Right, brilliant. So 2005, Richard Louv wrote this amazing book. Everyone was like,
nature deficit disorder. I don't have to explain what nature is, right? Deficit, deficiency, disorder, confusion, or breaking the normal order. So what he was saying, there are many children or young minds now that he sees that not able to interact with all different natural environments, whether that be the ocean, seaside, grass, woodlands, etc. What he was saying is because there's too much screen time. The children are in their bubble, in their house, it's safe, they feel safer in there, and they're in control of their environment. They control everything. However, when that's taken away, when they come out to an environment they can't control, wind, feelings, sounds, colours, textures, they feel fear or anxiety. So they now no longer have any relationship with this. Now, my issue is, and what we're trying to establish, is that then leads to, well, who's going to be the custodians of this environment in the future if they don't love it. So all I want to ask you, how important do you think it is to have your children out amongst nature, exploring it? How important is it to you?
I think it's incredibly important. We have a day out in nature, even just an hour, and we get home and his children feels out, he's playing with his toys, and he goes to sleep a lot better at night as well, and he's hungry for his dinner, he's not at home on his screens asking for snacks and late bedtime. So, in terms of, a straightforward, simple family life, it's really important to me.
So would you also say that when and if you choose, I know you've already chosen school, if you do choose schools that your children go to, it's important for those schools to ensure that this is also part of the curriculum as well?
Yeah, when we were looking at schools, we made sure that the school has an emphasis on nature and outdoor play and going outdoors and enjoying what our town has to offer and our county has to offer. This is incredible.
I did not prompt this lady. This is amazing. I've just seen this lady on the beach. Thank you so much. Can I ask your name as well?
Yeah, it is.
Liz, I'm going to send Liz this little clip. I'll send it to you. That's all
thank
done.
you.
Is that
Yeah.
all right? I'll contact you. This is cool. This is exactly what we're talking about.